Alright, what we're going to look at in this lesson is congressional leadership. This is John Boehner. John Boehner is the current Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is the most important and powerful congressman. Speaker of the House is the only constitutionally mandated office in Congress. So when we look at some of these other positions, they're not mentioned in the Constitution, but the Speaker of the House is. This is because they are elected and they are acknowledged as the leader of the majority party. So the majority party, whether it be Democrat or Republican, is the party that has the most members in either the Senate or the House of Representatives. Now, theoretically, you could have a party other than the Democrats or the Republicans be the majority party, but that would take a huge shift in the way that American politics currently exists, and the likelihood of that happening anytime soon is slim to none. The minority party is the party that has the fewest members in either the Senate or the House of Representatives. And like we said just a few seconds ago, the current Speaker of the House is John Boehner. The Speaker of the House is expected to fulfill the following roles. They are expected to preside in a fair and judicious manner and to aid the fortunes of their party and its legislative goals. So think about that for a second. How can you both preside in a fair and judicious manner and aid the fortunes of your party and their goals? So that is something that is very difficult for them to balance, and for the most part, that fair and judicious concept kind of goes out the window, and the Speaker of the House is very much going to be a huge supporter of their own party and try and get the things that their own party want done. They also preside and keep order in the House, and part of that is that no one can speak on the floor until recognized by the Speaker. So if you want to talk in the House of Representatives and the Speaker of the House doesn't say, "Hey, go ahead and talk," then you don't get to say anything while the House session is going on. The Speaker of the House also interprets and applies the rules, which you can see where that would provide you with a lot of power within the system. They refer bills to committees, and we're going to talk about the committee process in a future lesson. They're going to rule on points of order. They're going to put motions to a vote, and they're going to decide the outcome of most votes taken in the House. They also name the members of all select and conference committees and sign all bills and resolutions passed in the House. And they actually are also going to appoint the members of standing committees as well. So that's a lot of power. They're going to put their own party in the majority of the positions within those committees. They're going to make sure that they put long-standing and really powerful representatives into those really important committees as well, so that they can continue to push the legislative agenda of their own party. The Speaker also declares the outcomes of votes. And there's a few different ways that you can vote within the House of Representatives. You can do secret ballots. You can do roll call votes in which every single individual's name is called, and then you mark down who voted what. You can also do the all in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. And the Speaker of the House is going to be the one that declares the outcome of those votes. So they're either going to be responsible for counting the votes, or they're going to be responsible for determining how loud each side is. The Speaker rarely votes, but when they do debate or vote, they must appoint a temporary presiding officer, which is known as the Speaker pro tempore. And you really don't need to know that, and you're not going to see a question on that, but that's just something that, it's kind of an interesting fact there for you to know. And then that member then occupies the Speaker's chair. Sometimes the Speaker will vote to cause a tie so that you can kill a proposal. This gentleman is Joe Biden. Now, you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about somebody from the executive branch when we're talking about Congress? Well, the reason why we're talking about the Vice President in this context is because the Vice President also has the title of President of the Senate. The President of the Senate is the Senate's presiding officer. This is the Vice President of the United States. The President of the Senate primarily performs the same functions as the Speaker of the House. Technically. However, there's really only one thing that the President of the Senate can do, and that is to break a tie in the Senate. The President of the Senate cannot take part in debates, they cannot talk, they cannot do anything. Really, the only type of influence they have is to either A, break a tie, or B, when the Senate session is over, then they can talk to people that they may have served with before to try and influence them in what they're doing. However, as far as formal power goes, the President of the Senate really can only break a tie, and that's really, it. Alright, this individual, who we're going to talk about here in a second, takes on the role of a ceremonial role within the Senate known as the President Pro Tempore. The current President Pro Tempore is Patrick Leahy. And he's a Democrat from Vermont. The other presiding officer of the Senate is the President Pro Tempore. He or she serves in the VP's absence. Now, because the fact that the Vice President has very little role as President of the Senate, they don't generally show up because there's no point in sitting there all day and listening to what's going on in the Senate when you can't participate. So they serve in that role in the VP's absence. They are elected by the Senate themselves, and they are normally the longest tenured member of the majority party. The role of the President Pro Tempore is largely symbolic. However, they are next in line after the Speaker of the House to become President. And that can become a symbolic concept or a really important idea, depending on how long that individual has been serving. So at one point in time, Strom Thurmond was fourth in line to be president, and he was in his late 90s. Okay, so you got to think about that. That is somebody in their late 90s that is, one catastrophe away from being president. So that's another thing that, an important concept to think about when you're voting to put somebody in office. Floor leaders. Floor leaders are part of both the majority and minority parties. Floor leaders are the most important officers in Congress. Floor leaders are picked for their posts by their party colleagues. So if we look at the current floor leadership within the House and the Senate, in the House we see that Eric Cantor is the current majority floor leader, and Nancy Pelosi is the current minority floor leader. Now, if there were to be a shift in the House of Representatives and say the Democrats were to take over, the most likely the minority floor leader would then take over as Speaker of the House if there's going to be a shift in party. What party dominates that chamber? The current floor leaders in the Senate are Harry Reid, and he's a Democrat from Nevada, and Mitch McConnell, who's the Republican. And really what the floor leaders do is they are strategists that try and make decisions to help their parties. They are going to, really look at what other parties are doing. They're going to look at what their own parties are doing, and they're going to try and come to some sort of a decision as to the best course of action for their party so that they can get the types of legislation passed that they would like to see passed. Along with the floor leaders, we have a position known as the whip. All right, whips are really the assistant to the floor leaders. They are chosen by members of their party with floor leaders' recommendation. They are the communication lines between the members of Congress and the party leadership. So these are the people that are doing the down and dirty work. These are the people that are in the background. They're counting votes. They're trying to make sure that there's enough support for certain pieces of legislation that are being passed. They are trying to make sure that everybody's on board. They're making deals, so if somebody from your party doesn't show up for a vote, then your floor leader is going to go through and they're going to try and make a deal with the other party to try and get them to not have somebody sit. So there's all this gamesmanship that goes on with the whips to try and ensure that positive things are going to happen for their party. The current House Majority Whip is Republican Kevin McCarthy, while the current House Minority Whip is Democrat Steny Hoyer. Caucuses. Caucuses are groups of members of Congress sharing some interest or characteristic. Many of these groups are composed of members from both parties from both houses. Notable caucuses are the House Democratic Caucus, the House Republican Conference, the Senate Democratic Caucus, the Senate Republican Conference, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Bike Caucus. And that's exactly what you think it is. These are congressmen that are trying to get laws that are passed that are pro-bike. Caucuses also are referred to as coalitions, study groups, task force, or working groups.